Welcome to the Friends of Feedy's podcast, brought to you by Feed Canada, our funding partner, ISED, and founding partner, the Saskatchewan Food Centre. This show is all about celebrating the incredible journeys of female entrepreneurs in the agri-food and food manufacturing sector. We're here to dish out the secrets of success and serve up a side of inspiration along the way. We are the Feed program where dreams are made, businesses are born, and the agri-food world is your oyster. Let's dine together. Hi, Valerie and Ira. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're having a good one. Can you just quickly introduce yourselves and explain to everyone what the Prairie Pantry actually does?
I'm Valerie Creighton. I'm living in the town of Stoughton, just outside of town. And in my work life, I am the CEO for the Canada Media Fund, which invests in Canadian content in the country.
Awesome. And I'm Ira. I was born and raised in Saskatchewan and spent many years abroad working in marketing and development, mostly based in hospitality. And when actually everyone talks about the pandemic in a bad way, but when it hit, I moved home and I started gardening and developed a product line. And then my mom stole the name and wanted to make a cafe.
Yeah. We thought we'd work together. Yeah. The Prairie Pantry is a number of services for the community all combined. So there's a main store, and in the store there's a bistro. It's the only place you can get a cappuccino or a latte for about 30 miles. There's a laundromat, which I'll speak about in a moment, and attached just next door to the business is also a car wash. So it's almost like a little mini mall in the town of Stoughton.
Okay, great. Okay, so speaking of, what inspired you to kind of start this business that's this combination of the cafe, the car wash, and laundromat?
Well, the interesting thing about that is there was inspiration, all right, but it was completely organic. There was no, oh, we'll do this and it'll be that. And oh, here's the business plan and here's how we're going to do this. It was just kind of, oh, this building's for sale. Okay, well, maybe we'll buy, maybe we'll combine this. It was a very organic, it really is like the, if you build it, they will come kind of initiative that got us going. Then as we got into it, a couple of things happened. The local laundromat in town had closed down. There had been a fire in one of the dryers and the people who owned it just didn't feel that they wanted to re-energize everything. And I had used that laundromat for many years when I didn't have, a washer and dryer when I lived on the farm. And it's a rural community and there are lots of people around our area whose water isn't great and relied on the laundromat. And I thought, well, I wonder, now that we've got sort of found this building, if we can make a deal with the previous owners and buy the equipment and move it into the building and re-energize the laundromat for the community. And that's what we did. So that was one piece of it. And I think when the pandemic hit and Ira moved home and was not sure what she wanted to do, and she came in one day and said, I can't be out in this garden in these boots. Can I take these boots off and go in my bare feet? And I said, well, that's how you're supposed to garden because you're connected to the land when you're in your bare feet. So she built this massive gardening project. It was 100 feet by 50 feet. And I was watching her engage herself in the land and what that was kind of doing to her as her thought process evolved and as her thinking evolved and as her experience with that evolved. And one day I was looking out the kitchen window and my brother Tom and Ira, he was teaching her how to plant potatoes. He's got a very rigid approach to planting potatoes, believe me. And so they were out there working together and I looked up and honestly, I thought it was my mom or my grandma and my grandpa, because just the body language in that garden and how they were working together immediately took me back to, a kid growing up in rural Saskatchewan and how important food was in our life and how we were the 100-mile kind of food experts in those days because everybody did everything off the farm. And I looked at them and then Ira was working. She got herself certified in food sciences and medicinal herbs. And she was working towards building her brand, the Prairie Pantry. And many years ago in the 70s, I ran a little business in town, a coffee shop, interestingly enough. And I felt like I was going to the past, but it was called, what was it called? The Plant Factory, right? Sorry. Well, I've been on the phone a long time today already for work, but it was called the Plant Factory, but had a similar kind of, I guess, inspiration in a way in terms of putting something in the community that simply didn't exist. So I would say that Ira's incredible creativity, the ideas, the garden, certainly inspired getting going on this business. And then the combination of how everything just kind of fell into place. The building was there, the car wash was right beside. It was all kind of, as I said, organically developed into what it has become today. So the inspiration would mostly be where we used to be, how we were in the province, how important land and the management of food was, and how maybe we could play a small part in returning people's thinking to exploring that once again, and offer a service to the community as well as a place to gather. So that's how we ended up where we are today.
Between the two of you, how do you manage the different aspects of the business?
Well, I manage the day to day. My experience obviously was mostly in marketing, hospitality, and such and that, but in like really large cities. So it was a huge transition to figure out how to work with rural communities. And I just wanted to show people a little bit about how food can heal your body. And so I basically just gave all the food away for the first 2 years. We probably won't make any money for 7, but I'd be trying things. And people were known for our pies, right? Which came from my great grandma and my grandma and generations. But people would say, oh my goodness, I had your collagen smoothie or this soup or whatever, and started to come back for that. So I'm not allowed to actually work in the cafe because we don't make any money when I do those days. I just give it all away as samples.
Well, I think that, that's true, but it's the creativity that Ira put into her brand and the creativity of the food that was really, really responded and interesting to people. And I think generally, as a population, we're all looking to be healthier. We're all starting to understand the importance of food and how it affects our bodies and makes us healthier as people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ira does oversee the business, but she's a very kind person and far too nice. So when the hard decisions have to be made, I get to step in as the bad cop, I guess you would say. And luckily we've got a great team and we haven't had to do that very often, but we're starting to now, I think, after building and developing, and as she said, she's got a fantastic food line that she develops in the commercial kitchen. Now we're starting to see the potential of what could be there. So we're really changing gears a little bit. And I would say, gearing up to make sure that there's strong revenue and we can keep people employed and make sure this service is there for the community. So I guess she gets the great ideas. She's the creative part, and then I have to go find the money somewhere. So,
and just to add to that, it was just a crazy journey because we started not really expecting to have the development and growth we did, and we had 2 people, and then now we employ 7. And so the stress of that with the economy is sometimes difficult. And I think I'm maybe answering one of your later questions, but it's just, I think, keeping focused on what the brand is. Like, why do you want to do this? I wanted to do it to create health and wellness. And then we got really into pie. So we're trying to figure out how to do both.
Okay, great. So I'm just curious a little bit about the business that you started. Is everything sold out of like the cafe location, or are you actually selling your products that you're creating in the commercial kitchen in other locations? Is it like by a mail service, or how does that work?
Right now, everything is sold out of the cafe.
Okay.
I have a perfection problem. And so I could have probably done more. We could talk about carrots for a minute because I didn't know you can't buy canned carrots in very few places. And what I did realize in the first year is I'm better at canning than growing, but I still grow. And so I started working with some local retailers and farmers to see if the product comes in and it's fresh and it's that day and I can can it better than anyone. That's what I should be focusing on, right? And so we work with a local community out of LaJord and a couple different places to get like fresh produce that's from Saskatchewan that I know. And they have like a rule I have to can it that day. And yeah, we sold out of carrots. I wish I would have done 5,000 jars, not 500.
Wow. How does your business serve the local community?
When we sat down and started to build a case for the building and the brand, one of the important factors was bringing people together. The part of that inspiration came from my mother, who ran the town basically. She ran the Legion, made great meals there. She worked in my brother's restaurant for years as the main actually pastry maker, but also oversaw all the food services. And there was a spirit of really great community in the places that I observed, her work and her advantage. In fact, when we launched the store, Ira had this great idea. She's got a recipe box that everybody in the community says, can you give me your mom's recipe for this, that, or the other? She brought this thing to the bake sale and everybody just loved it. Can you find that recipe? So we did. I had a fantastic idea where we launched the store, the sort of test opening with 100 recipes in 100 years. And it would have been, she died at 97, but it would have been her 100th birthday that day on April 23rd when we did the opening. We had to hide the recipe box though, because, some were saying, people are taking those recipes and leaving with them. We got to put this away because she was a renowned, known cook, chef, baker in the community. So Ira's come up with great ideas. Why don't you talk about the fundraiser that you did since then? And it's kind of built on that same community spirit approach.
I just want to touch on my grandma for a minute because when I moved back to Stoughton after living like kind of all around the world, some of the ladies that I met said, your grandmother would bring us a pie when we didn't speak English and introduce us to the community and teach us about different things. So I got to meet a lot of the grandmas and they were a huge part of it because I have the recipes. The problem is they didn't leave any ingredients. What is a half butter? Is that a half cup? Is that a half stick? There's no temperature on the oven because they did it from heart. And so doing that for my grandma was a really special thing. And, we do a lot of fundraisers. So Ocean Man community is just north of us and they love our baking. And so we did a fundraiser and raised $1,800, I think, net in one lunch, right? And so people come and support. And we had one of the ladies, she came out and made the bannock, and we did bannock tacos, and people didn't even know what that was. And so it was so great because this is where we're from, and how can we combine our retail space with places and our actual local culture, which goes way beyond. So it's a mix of my grandma, California, the local, land that we grew up on. I don't know. It's confusing to some people, but I do believe that just always trying to stay as local to the land as possible is what we've been focusing on.
I lived here when I was very young, and then I was away for 30 years and came back and started the ranch that I live on. And it always amazes me how it's an interesting, any rural small community has its certain traditions. And there's a combination of people who say, well, that's not the way we did it. This is too new. I don't understand it. And people say, oh, this is so great. I never thought about it that way. So it's constantly integrating, I think, what's been with something that's a little bit not so familiar to people. But what I've noticed recently, I mean, even things like your fundraisers, and Ira does other things. She hosts book readings for local writers in the community, great creativity. And it's just watching how this community grows and has changed, and the value of what we're trying to do in sort of that process. So it's been a real learning experience too, and a really positive experience.
That's so great. So I'm glad to hear all of the positive, great things. I'm going to just kind of turn that now and ask you about some of the challenges you've run into with a business such as this. So you've got all these pieces that you have to work with, and just, what challenges come with a business like this?
I'll speak to this one. I think just how fast it grew, and not necessarily understanding, actually just being surprised with how interested people were with health and wellness types of products. Like we have a smoothie line where we have collagen, but then I found a bone broth line. So like some of the guys come and they have, a blueberry smoothie because it's made with collagen protein, like bone broth protein, not that. Figuring out how to stay focused on the thing you're passionate about, because the business that makes the most money is not necessarily the one you're passionate about. And so feeds helped me a lot with that, because I said, okay, wait, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Why am I doing this? Because it's selling. And so having that check-in every, now I'm trying to do it every single month and just say, okay, that I've gone off my brand, not off, but how can I combine it? How can I make pies more healthy? How can I do things like that and still contribute to the community? Multifaceted businesses, staffing's extremely challenging in a rural community, as everyone knows. So deciding what you're best at, giving your team the opportunity to grow. I think my former employer said to me once, when I have the worst idea in the room, it's my happiest day.
Because somebody in your team has a better idea.
Right. And so just really giving everyone an opportunity to explore, and then fighting with them on recipes on why you can't have any preservatives in them. Right. And so even though we make a lot of pies and things that are somewhat higher in sugar, how can we make that more diabetic friendly, like, healthier and that, and just managing it all, working with my boyfriend and my mother, who is the money, my boyfriend is the operations and does everything. If I didn't have him, I don't even know. And trying to keep the conversation of the business not at the dinner table.
Yeah, absolutely fair. You mentioned very quickly there about feed and kind of some of the benefits. You've taken, I believe, 2 of our accelerators now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just finished the last one last week.
Yeah, no, it was great. But do you mind sharing with our audience kind of what your experience has been like taking our accelerators? I always like to ask when a guest has been through our programs.
Absolutely. The first one, when I did my pitch, it was more about a story on the ranch and the garden line. And what I learned was no one can understand in 1 minute everything we're trying to do. So figure out one thing, focus on it, and really take the courses, review them, listen to the resources. In the second one, I had so much positive feedback because I'd really just honed in on one thing. But that wasn't just about the pitch. It was more focus on one thing in life, slow down to speed up, and, really get that thing running perfectly, whether it's staffing or a product or carrots. So next year it's going to be carrots, but that seems small, but it was huge. And slow down to speed up, take the courses, never stop learning. My food inspector came in. He's like, well, you have more degrees than the thermometer. What are you going to do next? But it's just been amazing. And work out with the networks that you have locally, because it's so amazing. And I've met so many people through the feed program.
Lindsay, I'm just going to add that as Ira was taking our courses, I travel a lot for work, so I'm not around a lot, but I happen to be in the first one and the second one. And what I remember her saying is, oh my God, Mom, these people are incredible, like the resources that are brought to bear. So I'm just learning so much, and it's amazing, and it's helping me think through. So I think that's what you found was a big benefit of the program, is it helped you get to where you wanted to go on a number of fronts.
Also, just like a check-in point of like getting back to your brand, right? Which is super key, because we opened in we were building the store in 2022, and you get going so fast. And if you lose your brand value, it's difficult. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, this needs to go back to what we started, because it was the inspiration, back to the roots, always of the brand. And all of those courses really helped me check in on that. And it helped me reset. I just started my 2025 strategy, and that's going to be a big part of it.
Nice. That's great. That's so great to hear. And yeah, I so appreciate that the value that that you took and everyone can take from the programs. Another thing that I just kind of wanted to pivot back to that we touched briefly on, but just to actually ask about, um, do you have any specific strategies for balancing having your personal relationship, your professional relationship? I knew it was the two of you working together. I didn't know you were also working with your partner. So how do you kind of balance that and try and keep maybe some work-life balance? Maybe that's a myth, work-life balance, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I can speak to this one because I had a thought earlier this week when I was just thinking about the whole thing. And in my previous career, I always scheduled a meeting, right? So if we needed to talk about something, we scheduled a meeting. But when you're working with family or your boyfriend, you don't. And so now we're going to try to schedule meetings. And like I said, so we need to talk about this. This is the operation that needs to be fixed. This fridge is not working. He does all like the, he gets the garden going with the water and helps me pull it and just different things. But we're not going to talk about that just 20 minutes every day with a few different text messages. We're going to have a meeting like I would do in any other job, right? And so when we have supper, we just have supper.
That's great. So that's helped you.
We're going to try anyway, because we talk about it 24 hours a day. But that's why I don't know why I never thought about doing it that way, because in every other career I've ever had, you just would schedule a meeting. And so even with my business partner and different people that work, instead of having that conversation, I said, pitch me your idea. Here's the cost. Here's the price. Let's talk about it, instead of a constant flow, because you are friends and partners.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things you've done to try to, to focus on what the immediate issue is. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of talking about it all day. I think both Ira and Corey, the boyfriend, and even myself, and I want to stay out of the day-to-day. Like, it's not my skill. It's not my expertise. I don't have the time. These guys are completely competent, but it's become the whole life, right? So suddenly you don't even have a life outside of all the things it takes. And there are like four or five businesses involved here. So it's very complicated and very complex. And I think some of the things you've learned in the past have really brought to bear, kind of just streamline that so that you do have time outside of all of that to talk about something else. What book did you read? What movie do you want to go to see? Something that's more normalized in terms of life. I don't believe there is work-life balance. However, I've been working for over 45 years, and life is life and work is work, and often they're intertwined, and we do our best, and it's just the way the world has gone, right? It's different.
However, I'm starting a golden rule for 2025 that no one can talk about business at supper.
Good idea.
Yeah, I love that. Just at least some dedicated time to just focus on your personal relationship, or just things that aren't work.
She says that, but just she makes the most extraordinary meals out of a lot of the fresh produce of the garden. And then we're eating and thinking, oh my God, she's okay. What's the rating? 1 to 10. So she says, no talking about it at supper. We'll see how that's going to go, because it's food-based, right?
I make them rate it because I want it to be the best. And they are like,
well, maybe you have to stop your rating system so that we don't have to talk about food all the time at the supper table.
Or you could just create a little sheet that people can rate it on after they're done their meal. So you don't have to have the conversation. They can leave a little comment card for you.
Good idea. Comment cards. That's a good idea.
Good idea. We will have comment cards starting January 25.
That's great. So with the cafe and everything that you have going on over there, you already kind of mentioned the pies, but is there anything that's kind of like a signature item, or the things that people are like most coming in for?
So it's kind of a mix. Can I talk about more than one quickly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we started this program in the summer. It was a strawberry lemonade. People wanted a cold drink, but we make it from fresh strawberries in the summer because they're local, and so less chemicals, an actual thing we do. So that's a hit, and people want it all year long. Saskatoon berries were from Saskatchewan, and so that's something we've done a lot of with different things, like even like a cold London Fog Saskatoon berry latte, like different things like that. Also, there's really nowhere. We've got some great coffee shops in the Southeast, like for Michael's, but in our region, there's really not a lot. And so just having a great Americano and cappuccino, and our egg salad was my grandma's recipe. And so I started making it with bacon, which is not healthy. So that's a struggle for me, because it's like, this is what sells, but this is right. So looking at different breads and ryes and things, but I'm working on a new pastrami sandwich that's more healthy with rye for the winter. And the smoothies, there's nowhere to get a smoothie that's fresh made. We do everything fresh. So there's a lot of customers that are like expecting just like a pull from like a Tim Hortons thing. We don't do that. So we're like definitely slow food. And if they don't want to wait, too bad. Like go fast food. And our breakfast sandwiches, make them all from scratch. And we try different things that are gluten-free. You know, obviously there's the bacon and egger, but we're doing one with red pepper and spinach right now, and mini quiches, and our tarts are pretty much our signature items. I'll send you a shipment.
Yeah, that sounds great. And that's so great to hear too, because like I'm sure many people are aware of this, but as you get more rural, it is so much more difficult to find those fresh options, to find the things that aren't necessarily just packed with preservatives so that they last on the shelf for a really long time and stuff. Um, so that is just such a a unique thing that you're bringing there, and just that people wouldn't have access to if you weren't doing what you were doing. So I really commend that. And it's like, just you talking about this, I'm like, how far of a drive is this from Saskatchewan? I feel like I need to I need to stop by and check it out. It sounds amazing.
Come in the summer. You don't have to deal with all these snowbanks. But
I think our canned preserves too. Like I just got an order for a huge order for salsa that someone wanted to do for their whole family, right? And so sometimes we can't get it right local, but I got a producer that I work with in BC that sends me tomatoes, and most of it is all comes from Saskatchewan, but there's times our growing season's so short. So that has been one of the challenges for sure. Because I sold out of carrots. I wish I would have bought more carrots.
Now
no,
you
it's
know
true.
that.
I mean, I can remember when we
Or
were
grown more carrots.
growing more carrots. When we were starting the business, there were some, younger people that have moved away, and they come back on holidays and times and said, "Oh my God, it's going to be incredible to come home and be able to get a London fog. Like, I can't believe this is happening, in my own hometown." And as I said, sometimes there's resistance to new ideas, but then people try it. And I was great about, "Here, try this. It's a new thing I made. Tell me if you like it," and so people are very encouraged. And what surprised me the other day is, guys I grew up with in high school, like 50 years ago, regular types, farm kids, great people. They're coming all the time for sandwiches because they're fresh, right? They have the value of the food being fresh. And as you said, not sitting on a shelf for a long time, preserved. And there's just, people understand there's a difference in that, and it's important to them. It's important to all of us. So it's been an interesting journey around that in terms of making both of those sides of the discussion work.
Yeah, awesome. Can you tell me, like, what do you think, what does success for the business look like in, say, the next 5 years? Is there a plan, or is there like a place that you hope to be?
Well, I don't know if it'll be successful, but I do have a plan, and it would be something that really gives back to the community. There's so many local producers here that cannot sell to retailers because they don't have a commercial kitchen. So my goal is to build a commercial kitchen that can also be rentable. And then our kitchen's super small at the pantry. And if I'd known that we were going to do so much food, I would have built a larger commercial kitchen. So I want to build a commercial kitchen that's the pantry workshop, and some of the ladies that make the most amazing bread and different things can sell it beyond the farmers markets and to retailers, and then possibly do an e-com website.
Wow.
When I get to that.
Yeah, no, those are both that's amazing. And we've started with feed just on our website, when people have like spaces like that available, to be able to kind of share it with our members and anyone who's looking for those resources, because again, it's hard enough to find that in a bigger center. So I can only imagine in a more rural area, the idea of having like access to commercial kitchen space that you can easily rent is one of the many like barriers to entry for people. So that's so great. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I think yours, the Food Institute's one of the closest. There's one in North Dakota, and it's not attainable for anyone, right? To getting the goods there and being there and traveling back. And so if that's something we could do and just have fun and have some ingredients, and maybe even do like community caterings like the Legion and different things, and bring people together. I mean, the grandmothers were the prairie innovators, right?
Yeah.
But they can't sell at the retail stores. So it's something that was kind of the spark of my passion.
Yeah, I think the great thing for me will be when Ira's experimenting, she often will use my kitchen at home to experiment with things, right? And say, "Does this recipe work? What about this?" Well, cleaning up the kitchen is quite an interesting experience after she's done all of that.
My boyfriend actually made a joke and designed a plan where there's just a drain in the center
of the floor so that everything can just go down. Yeah, that's a great idea.
He said, I figured out your kitchen plan. And there's literally just a drain in the center and all like
and a garden
steel
hose
walls.
that you can wash things.
It is true. I get a little messy in the kitchen, but I tested it at home because it's just comfortable, and then when we finalize it, I think it took me 67 times to finalize my grandma's pie recipe. So.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of practice. Kitchen with the drain, I like that is such a great idea. I personally would love that because I am one of those cookers too. It's like, oh, once I get going, I was like, okay, now I need to do this. And I just kind of leave things as I'm done with them. And then afterwards look around and I'm like, what happened? It's just stuff everywhere.
I'm getting better. It was my New Year's resolution last year, but if I start one thing and I'm like, wow, well, that's cooking, I can do this and this and this also. But I think just trying to experiment with recipes and not being scared to try is the biggest thing, and just do the testing and then work with someone like the food center when you're ready to go to product. And I studied medicinal health. I studied food processing. And so the recipe development, something I'm never going to be good at. So learn what you're never going to be good at. Like have someone to consult and say, here's the idea, right? And work with someone. And you guys have been really awesome with that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And of course, there's so many things that you're good at that those are the things you need to be focusing on anyways, is developing all these delicious and amazing things. Are there any like lessons from working together, from the building the business, anything like that you feel like you want to share with our listeners today?
I think let your team shine would be my number one. I thought about this question. Like I know we touched on that earlier, but let people figure out what people are good at and don't put someone in a position that they don't like doing. So I have some team that is excellent at customer service and absolutely terrible at inventory. So don't schedule them for inventory, right? Try to be patient and don't give up when you're tired, and try to find time for yourself.
And I would just add, I think, in any endeavor, this is true. It's certainly true in my own life and my own off the ranch job is building the trust. Like if you don't have trust with the people you're working with, you don't have anything really at the end of the day. And if people aren't inspired, and Ira's been really great at, I often get frustrated and say, well, why can't they clean the car wash? Well, because their arm is sore, because they're not good at it, or because, it's certain things. But it's true. She's really found a way to get people in their lane. And you can see the productivity goes up and people are happier. And building the trust amongst the group, I think, is really critical because it's so important. It's a foundation. And I've always believed if you're, the people you work with are the core. If they're not happy, you can see the results at the end of the day at the till because they inspire others to come in. We've got some great people on our team who are thrilled to be able to work in a place like this because it's very unique in the town and very happy with the environment. I was going to mention that earlier. It's a small building and there was lots of debate and discussion and back and forth about how to set this environment up. And I have to give Ira credit with her design background because when you walk in, it feels incredibly spacious and it's an interesting, unique, creative environment as soon as you walk in the door.
So everyone fought me on that. They said this is going to feel like tunnels, and it doesn't. Like it's all connected.
Yeah, and they all fought me on getting the 100-year-old hardwood floor restored because they said you'll never do it. It's this and that. So my nephew scraped off, I think, 6 or 7 layers of flooring over the years. Carpet and wood and linoleum, just everything. Scraped that all off. We got down there and it was black as black could be, of course, because it's so old. And it took me about 4 months to find somebody who would be willing to come in and do it. And I found this company near us that had moved from Ontario. And he said, oh yeah, we do these all the time. And he sent me pictures. So I didn't tell anybody. I brought him in and wow. I mean, it's the cornerstone of the feeling and the environment. So I'm going to make them eat crow on that one for a really, really long time.
Every single day, if there's even a footprint on the floor, we hear about it. Yes.
It is beautiful. It turned out really well. And it's, I think, a tribute to the building itself. The laundromat that did exist was really neat. It was kind of vintagey, very almost Art Deco in the shape of the building. And it had this great big blue sign that said laundromat on the front. and the old, 50s dryers and all the rest of it. It was quite wonderful as a space. So when they were going to tear it down and we bought everything, Ira mentioned that we bought the internal drums from the dryers and she turned those into tables. We kept all the fronts of the dryers that say King Coin, in the old days, those were where you put the slot. And we redeveloped them as a feature wall, the actual doors. And we sanded down and repainted the sign, which is on the wall in the laundromat. So when people come in, I swear they have a feeling of, I think I've been here before, but it's not, it's brand new, but it has elements of preserving how important that was to the community. So that was just a real vision of Ira to keep that heritage and make sure it stayed alive.
My boyfriend busted me on a windy day. I was spray painting the drums because I was trying to restore the table bases and I was covered in paint, and he was trying to find the photo, but I was navy green. Let's just say it was a color that doesn't even exist. And he's like, did you not see the spray paint was going on you? Yeah. So we have the photo somewhere, but that's definitely a memory. But I just wanted to make it authentic and try to use those pieces. So we built these custom bases for all the tables. And then we got wheat from a local farmer that actually sits inside the tables so you can see it, and also the door frames and different things. So I think the space just feels like there's references of just home and the prairie land that you've always said, look at the skies if you're ever depressed.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it really just all those details, all those things, just how much you care really just shines through. That is the definition of good design, in my opinion, is when, you think about all those pieces. So congratulations. And again, you're selling me. I really want to come check it out. So.
Anytime come in the summer. It's more fun.
But do you have any, like, a favorite memory of working together that you want to share with us at all?
I think just being covered in black paint and not even realizing it, and like navy green. My mom's colorblind, and so the
only in two colors, not all.
But I designed one side with navy blue and one side with green, and she could never figure out the color of each because she's colorblind. And so being able to work with her was amazing. And just opening on like our official opening after our soft opening on my grandma's 100th birthday, who worked everywhere from, Harry's Cafe, where she told me a story where she had to, the times were tight and she had to draw the line on her stockings because they were required
on
to
her
wear
legs.
On her legs.
She didn't have
the money to afford the stockings. And, my family was just screwed in hospitality in a way. And even though I worked in Miami and LA and everywhere, there's really just nothing like home.
Yeah. I think my favorite, it's kind of a memory, more of an observation, I guess, is after everything we went through to, as I said, we had no business plan. I went and found some money to do the reno, and it was a full on, none of the electrical was to code. We had to build bathrooms. It was a full on HVAC, like it was a full renovation. And I began to wonder what on earth are we doing here? Is anybody going to ever walk in the door? And the day of the opening, well, a lot of it was curiosity, but it got packed in there. And it was the look on Ira's face that is my best memory, because, oh my God, like this might actually work. Like people are really interested in what we're doing. And it was a joyous thing to behold, because we worked really hard. She in particular worked really hard. She always said, well, I came home, I was supposed to just design this, not manage the whole thing. And I said, well, I wasn't thinking about sandwiches. I was just going to have coffee in the laundry. And she said, yeah, and you would have been broke in 2 days. And so the debate back and forth about what works and what doesn't. And we are now, I think, at the point she's got a plan, and we're looking at how to take some of the pressure off her on some of the things that other people could do. Now that we're more in a better cycle, we've got great staff. It's operating better. It was pretty chaotic that first year. I'll tell you,
so I can focus on the food, just to interrupt, because that's what I missed. That was actually to answer further. I miss being in my garden and like actually looking at the food and how it's canned, and I figured out what I'm good at. And that's that, like taking these recipes and figuring them out. I did one that was like a fennel carrot that was from the San Francisco Food Institute. And it was one of the most amazing things. But our town wants traditional. So like, how do you break that down and figure out? It's just all about how you market it and sell it and just explain to people. And we've done no marketing other than word of mouth, a little bit of Facebook and community events. So figuring out how to take some of those things that could be available to a wider audience and then keeping the grandma's recipes traditional.
This project was a huge risk. And will it pay off? Looking like it. But I think if you have something in your heart, and that's what I observed about Ira's work around this, yeah, she's got too much on her plate and we'll fix that. But in her heart is this element of the food. And if you have something in your heart, the risk is worth it. You know, it may work, it may not work, but if you don't take the risk, you'll never know. And I think that was important for you as you did the training, both with Cornell and the Feed Institute. And it was getting her feet in the garden that day that turned, well, maybe my life isn't in Miami, or maybe it is sometimes, but really I'm rooted in this garden now. And she took full advantage of that in the development of the food line. And I think people in the communities are really responding to it, you know, and they're really interested in finding out, you know, yes, they're traditional in meat and potatoes. That's how I grew up, meat, potatoes, and maybe a vegetable. But meat was always the, you know, the first thing. What are we going to have for supper? What's the meat? Right, was always the first thing. And that's fine. But I think people are willing to experiment a bit more. And if you offer something that is a bit unusual or a bit out of their comfort zone, some people will jump in and some won't. But if you don't take the risk, you never know.
I think the last thing I'll say is just people always ask me, like, I'll be 44 and they say, you look so young, this and that. I just eat really well. And I eat sugar, I eat fat, I live on butter, but I don't eat a lot of preservatives. Mm-hmm. And you feel better. Mom always says when she's traveling, oh, well, I just feel better when you cook for me.
Yeah.
And so I just try to keep, you can't always do it. Like, it's impossible, right? And I don't know, how would you explain that?
Well,
that's it.
It is how good food, well prepared, that doesn't have chemicals, because we've really moved, you know, as a society. It was always based on the garden, especially in rural Saskatchewan. That's how people lived and existed, was putting that food in the ground, harvesting it, and lived through the winter. People were quite healthy then. Question, I wonder why. And then we shifted to this fast food, convenient, grab a burger, grab a sandwich that's been on the shelf. And, you know, and our co-op has them, and there's a market for that for sure. But it's been in that plastic for how long, and what's in it that keeps it shelf safe for a week or two. So it is, I think, about how food makes you feel as a person, and it gives you more energy and more insight. And you just, I don't know, when I come home and Ira cooks, I just feel everything works better. My brain, my skin, my hair, digestion, everything just works because the food is real food. It's the whole real food thing, I think, that's important.
I know it's overused, but food is mood, and I'm not always perfect. My favorite junk food is Cheese Whiz. Don't ask. They have to hide it from me. But most of the time, we just really try to eat things and provide things in the store and the product lines that are very low in preservatives, as low as possible, if any. And that's kind of how we do. So
yeah, she's got her dog addicted to Cheese Whiz and celery. In fact, she gave him a piece of celery the other day without Cheese Whiz, and he wouldn't eat it. So there you go.
I love that. That's so cute. That's too funny. He's like, try again. Get the Cheese Whiz and try.
I feed him apples and cucumbers and vegetables, and I have 2 rescue puppies that are huskies. And he was like, would always eat the vegetables, but now he had a piece with Cheese Whiz.
Yeah, now he's resisting.
He's a fancy boy. He's like, let's get some condiments on here. Let's go. Thank you both so much for taking the time to join me. I really appreciate it. And I've really enjoyed getting the chance to chat with you guys both. So thank you so much.
Thank you to our listeners for indulging your entrepreneurial appetite with this episode of Friends of Feedies. Brought to you by Feed Canada, our funding partner ISET, and founding partner, the Saskatchewan Food Centre. If anything we have discussed today has ignited an entrepreneurial fire within you, but you're not quite sure how to get started, or you're craving mentorship and coaching to help grow your business, please reach out to us at feed.ca. That's FEAD.ca. Connect with us on social media. We're sprinkled all over the digital landscape, and our team is ready to provide the mentorship and coaching you need to flourish. At Feed, we're here to empower women in the agri-food industry, so don't hesitate to reach out to us to join our vibrant community of foodpreneurs. Until next time, bake those dreams into reality, stay hungry for success, and continue to nourish your entrepreneurial spirit with Feed. Bon appetit.